Today's question comes from Instagram, and it's from Sophie Ann, and she asks, what is the best way to overcome loneliness? And how is it possible to overcome the fear of sleeping alone? Great question. I think loneliness is something that many of us experience at least at some point during our lives. There are many different types of loneliness. There is physical isolation and feeling like you're yearning for human connection, which could be friendships or maybe connection with people at work and you're feeling lonely in those situations. Or there is loneliness for a romantic partner. And you can also feel lonely when you are surrounded by people. I know it doesn't sound like loneliness, but there's a type of loneliness for understanding. And if you're surrounded by people that you feel don't understand you or that you can't really connect with, then that can feel lonely even if you are surrounded by people. Even if you're in a house full of people, you can feel lonely. For the sake of this video, I'm going to assume that your question is about romantic loneliness based on the fact that you said sleeping alone. The first thing I want to speak a little bit about is perspective. And perspective is something that we do have a certain amount of control over and that we can change. And so what happens when we fear something, say the fear of loneliness in this example, is we tend to amplify things and think of the worst case scenario, and our mind starts to kind of ask questions like, what if I feel lonely forever? What if I have to sleep alone for the rest of my life? What if I'm always lonely and nothing is going to fix this feeling that I have? And that tends to make us feel even worse in the current moment. Even though those thoughts kind of just rush in and they're not necessarily true, they do tend to make you feel worse, and they make that sense of loneliness and that yearning for connection even stronger. And I think that it's really important to remind yourself that what you're experiencing now is a phase of your life. It doesn't have to be the forever situation, even though it might feel like that right now. Life is constantly in motion, and one of the certain things of life is that change happens. And so even though it might seem like you've had weeks or months or even years of being alone or having feelings of loneliness, it doesn't have to be the case forever. Things can change for you tomorrow. Things can change for you next week or the week after. And so just putting that into perspective and thinking about what you're going through right now as a phase of your life, not necessarily something that you are doomed to experience forever, is really important. And speaking from personal experience as someone who was single for quite a while, I was single for over 4 years before I met Alex, and I've had my fair share of alone time. Sometimes I felt loneliness, other times I really enjoyed and appreciated that alone time. Like being able to take some time on your own to reflect on the past and, things that you can learn about yourself, and how you can really get clear about the types of friendships that you do want, so that when you meet those people, they're really easy to identify. And the type of romantic relationship you want. What type of person are you wanting to attract into your life? What type of partner do you want? And what do you want your life to look like in the future? And that kind of brings me to my next point, which is sometimes what I do when I'm frustrated about something or feeling stuck or feeling confused is to take a zoomed out view of my life and look at all the times where I was going through a phase of something that really didn't feel good, and looking at how necessary that time was in order to get me to the next step. And so you might not know it now, but maybe this feeling of loneliness or this period in your life without a partner or without the friends and the companionship that you want is so important for a reason that you don't know of yet. And that's the thing, often we think of where we want to get to in life, but we forget that, you have to go through certain steps in order to get to that place. And so based on this topic, I have a movie recommendation for you. You may have seen it. It's one of my favorite feel-good movies, and it's called Under the Tuscan Sun. And I just watched it again recently. And the main character, Frances, experiences a lot of sadness and loneliness because her husband cheated on her and she's recently divorced. And spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the movie, I'm going to be speaking about it. It's an older movie, but She ends up going to Italy and buys this big old villa spontaneously and feels more alone than ever because she has this big house with all of these rooms. And she says, what if I never have anyone to sleep in all of these rooms? I have this big kitchen, what if I never have anyone to cook for? And she kind of just wallows in her loneliness. And her friend basically says to go out and enjoy your life, go put on a beautiful outfit and just go enjoy the day. You're in Italy, you know, stop focusing on the loneliness aspect and go enjoy your life the best you can. And her friend gives this great metaphor in the movie, which I love and I think of often. She said, when I was a little girl, I used to run around the field trying to find ladybugs and trying to catch them so that I could see them up close, but I could never get any. She said, eventually I gave up and fell asleep in the grass. When I woke up, they were crawling all over me. And so basically it's a metaphor for saying, once you identify what you want, instead of constantly having to force it to happen, if you just let it go and focus on something else, focus on your work, focus on your house, focus on your fitness, focus on something else in your life, and everything will just fall into place. So I highly recommend checking out that movie. It's called Under the Tuscan Sun, and it's starring Diane Lane, who I also really love, and I'll put the information in the description box. And as far as the fear of going to bed alone, I want to share something with you that Neville Goddard taught me, and I absolutely love his books and highly recommend them. He speaks a lot about the power of the human imagination. And one of the techniques that he recommends is to live as though the thing you want is already here and now. And so what you can do as an activity is to pretend when you're going to bed, set the scene of what it will be like when you have your ideal partner who is lying in the bed next to you. So instead of focusing on how you feel alone and how the person's not there yet and you wish they were but they're not, and just that's going to make you feel worse and worse and worse. Instead, think about what it will be like when they are there. You know, what will you do? Will you guys maybe go on a nice walk after dinner? What will you have had for dinner together? You know, what type of music will you be listening to together? Will you watch a movie before bed? You know, just set that scene and think about all of those things. And it feels good to focus on the good, to focus on what you want to create in your life instead of focusing on the fact that you don't currently have it yet. And so I hope that is helpful for you. And I know it's not the same as a real life friend or a real life hug, but I am sending you a big hug through the screen to anyone who is feeling lonely today. I've been there, many of us have been there, but just know that we're all connected. We might not all be together all the time, but us as human beings, we are all connected, and I'm just sending out lots and lots of love to you, and I hope that amazing friends come your way and the perfect partner comes your way, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.